Hi, everyone. I am Donna Reed. I live in Tucson, Arizona, and I traveled in Up with People Cast A 1976. A lot of you already know that. And this morning, my guest is Dave Martin. Dave lives in Sunbury, Ohio. Dave, tell our Up with People family and friends where you first saw a show, how you learned about Up with People, please, and welcome.
I first saw the show in Canton, Ohio in 1968, 5 days before I graduated from high school. A friend of mine named Bruce Montgomery called me up and said, "Hey, there's a show in town tonight called Up with People. You want to go?" And we went to the show. We both interviewed after the show. He ended up in Cast B, I ended up in Cast C. And a week after graduation, we went to Fort Slocum, where we learned more about Up with People. And then a couple months later, went on the road. I actually joined.
Let me pause for just a second. So what year was this, Dave?
1968.
1968. You might have said that, so I apologize. So 1968, high school, and there was several casts, it sounds like. There was, because you said one of you wound up in B and one in C, and I guess I didn't know how many were traveling back then.
There were three casts back then, Cast A, B, and C.
Okay.
And I traveled with Cast C for about 2 years. And then I went from them to travel to Africa with the Smithfield. So.
Okay, so your experience, first of all, for the people that don't know, tell everybody where Fort Slocum is.
Fort Slocum was an island off the coast of New York City, and Up with People used that island sort of as a training ground area, if you will. And that's where they would invite people to come to learn more about it, start learning the show and everything before the cast went on the road. It wasn't actually staging. It was more of a just get to know us kind of thing. And most people, for a week, I ended up staying 3 weeks. But it was a great time learning about Up with People.
Tell me how your parents felt about this.
Well, I didn't have a dad. My dad died when I was 8 years old, but my mom, I was amazed. She just jumped right in. She said, "Okay." I didn't have any plans at that point. I lived in Ohio, which is a steel mill town. And I just figured I'd end up working in a steel mill the rest of my life. And then I saw the show, and here I went on the road.
The number of people, I'm one of those kids that was 17. It was my senior year, and it totally changed my life that year too. And for me, that was 1976. So you go to Fort Slocum, you learn that, and then you joined the cast a couple months later, you said.
Yes.
And what did that mean, joining the cast? Did you fly somewhere and just get on the bus?
I flew from Akron-Canton Airport in Ohio to Montreal, and then Tom Smith picked me up there. He was the transportation guy for Cast C. Okay. And he drove me to Rimouski, Quebec, and that's where the cast was performing that week. And Ralph introduced me to the cast, Ralph Caldwell, and I was a crew member.
Okay.
And I didn't play any musical instruments or anything.
Okay.
And one of my memories from my very first day on the road, I sat next to Ralph Caldwell during the show that night.
Oh.
And when the show was over, Ralph leaned over to me and very quietly said, and I can still hear the words coming out of his mouth, "Now that you're a member of the cast, you probably ought to let somebody else in the audience start the standing ovation."
That's really funny. Okay, so
but the thing that stuck with me was I heard him say, "Now that you're a member of the cast." That was the big hit there.
That was the big thing. So Dave, I'm trying to think, we know that Ralph passed away in the last couple of years, and he was the younger of the Caldwell brothers. How many years different were you in age from Ralph? Like I think about when I had student teachers in high school, and when you're a high school kid, they all seem older, even if they're only 3 or 4 years older, right? You could be 17 and they could be 21 doing their student teaching.
Oh, I think Ralph was probably 15 years older than me.
15 years older than you. Okay.
I'm guessing that, but I would guess that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I just have no idea. And for me, I remember coming to staging and then thinking now about how their kids were little kids. And
Yeah.
so they're somewhere between my parents and me, but I don't know. Everybody was younger than what it appeared at that time, because when you're a
And
kid.
see, back in those days, we didn't have staging. We
Yeah.
pulled into a town, we'd actually interview people and they'd be on the bus the next day ready to go.
That is fascinating to me. So you said you were part of the tech crew. What does that mean? What were you doing, Dave?
Stage setup. We set up our stage, we set up the microphones, we set up the lights. We did all that to get the stage ready for the show. I was in the show,
Yeah.
but as a chorus member.
Okay.
But
And
we had to unload the truck when we got to the town. We had to load the truck to get it ready to leave the town. And
right.
that was my job.
Okay. And so did you know that? Like, had you done that kind of stuff back in high school? Had you done anything where you
No,
were?
no.
Okay. Okay.
No.
So
But they asked me if I played it. They asked me if I played any instruments, and I didn't.
Okay.
And they hadn't heard me sing yet, so they just put me on the stage crew.
That's funny. So I know you play guitar and I know you sing. When did you start playing guitar?
Tim Murtaugh was a lead guitar player when I went to Africa with the Smithfields in 1970. And he taught me a couple chords, and that's what started me playing the guitar.
And did you have a guitar or just start using one of theirs?
No, I bought a guitar and I took it with me to Africa. I carried it everywhere I went, played every chance I got. And
okay.
So yeah, that's what got me started playing the guitar.
Okay, so explain to me, and because these are things I don't know, and to everyone else, especially those younger, which is a whole lot of people younger than us, Dave. When you said you went with the Smithfields to Africa, explain even who the Smithfields were and how that evolved and was related to Up With People.
Well, they originally were called the H.J. Chuck Tim Smithfields. And the H stood for Harry, the J stood for John Tracy.
Okay.
Chuck stood for Chuck Wansley, who was the drummer. Tim stood for Tim Murtaugh. Smith was for Dick Smith, a guitar player, and Fields was Frank Fields, a guitar player.
That's a long name. I'm glad they changed that.
Yeah, they changed it to the Smithfields after a couple of tries. But they were a collection of lead group members from all the casts that put this group together, and they went on and they took a few people with them to go do shows and this and that and the other thing. So
were you there during the time in the Congo? I remember Ralph singing Vive la Congo and stuff. Were you part of that group?
No, I didn't go to the Congo. I went to Kenya, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. They actually did. That cast scene was actually in the Congo when I was at Fort Slocum.
Okay. So here you are in Africa. I don't even understand how Up With People got to Africa. Did people sponsor you? Did you stay in homes like we did, 10 years later? What was that like?
I stayed in a home, one in Nairobi. There was a guy from somewhere, a businessman, that had a couple of us stay at his house. But most of the time we stayed in hotels or hostels, youth hostel kind of places. But we were in Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia. We actually did a show, and I still have a picture to this day of the cast with Jomo Kenyatta, who was the president of Kenya at the time. We went to his house and did a show for him. And but we just whenever we could, wherever we could, we'd perform. And our first show there was in this big park in Nairobi.
Yeah.
And there must have been 2,000 people there watching us set up the equipment. They were just amazed by all what was going on. And when the first sound came out of the electric guitar, you should have seen the people jump. It was amazing. But
What's fun? Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The show was done, there were about 5,000 people there watching us do this show.
What's funny to me is when we first logged on and we had some trouble and you had said, I'm not very techy. And yet, if you think back to what you're saying right now, you were bringing something extremely technical for that time.
Yeah.
You talk about plugging things in and stuff like that. So that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. So then when did the time in Africa end? And was that the end of your time on the road with Up With People?
We were done with that in early November. And then I spent a couple more months with a cast before I went home. Yeah. I went home in December of 70.
December 70. Okay. So now you're back in Ohio, and had Up With People given you an idea of where you wanted to go or what you wanted to do with your life? I mean, did that, because you had said, okay, I was a high school senior, I didn't know what I was going to do. So now a few years have gone by.
Well, what I decided I wanted to go get an education. And so I went to Ohio State and graduated from there with a degree in English.
Okay.
And from there, I actually went to seminary, to United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio, which is a medical school. And I spent a year there.
Okay.
And then I got a little weary with all the politics in the church. So
wow, even back then.
even back then. But I got out of the ministry and actually went into social work for a while. I was a caseworker of Franklin County Children's Services.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So I met you on the Board of Governors, right?
Yeah.
When I think when I was like an era rep, I think, because I think for a while there was the cast rep thing, but then there was the era rep thing. And so I was the era rep for 75 through 80 or something like that. And then you were like, were you 65 to 70 or 70 through 75?
65 to 70.
65 to 70. So, okay. And that's when we first met. And then since then, you have been, you have always been around as an alumni. You have always been involved. I mean, there's people that disappear and we don't even know where they are. We never hear from them again, right? So you were yeah. And so
I actually spent 20 years and didn't even know if Up With People was still around.
Okay, so when was that?
Lost touch with Up With People.
Okay, when was that timing? Was that after you came back home in the early 70s?
From 1970 to 1990, I didn't have any contact with Up With People at all.
That's amazing, because that bicentennial, do you know how much time they spent in Ohio? They were there.
I know, but here's the deal. In 1989, I was going to play guitar and sing at a banquet.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do the song "The Walk" of Ed White.
Oh,
familiar with that song or not?
I am. Yeah.
But I could play and sing the song, but I couldn't remember Ed White's speech in the middle of the song.
Oh, yeah.
So I called Tucson and I said, "Do you have a listing for something called Up With People?" And they said, "Oh, yeah." And she gave me this phone number. I called the phone number. And I'm sorry, I'm so emotional about all this. But I called the phone number. This woman says, "Up With People, may I help you?" And I told her what I was looking for, the words to the speech in Ed White song. She said, "Well, just a minute, I'll put you in touch with our production department." And I thought, man, Up With People's come a long way. They have a production department. The next thing I hear is a voice says, "Production, Ralph Caldwell speaking."
Oh, that gives me chills.
So I said, "Well, you may not remember me. I used to travel with Up With People. My name's Dave Martin." He went nuts. He said, "Dave Martin, the Dave Martin?" I said, "Yeah, this is Dave Martin." And we talked for about a half hour, and that's when you paid for calls by the minute, so you can imagine. But I told him what I needed, and he said he would send it to me. And in that conversation, he told me about the Silver Celebration coming up that summer in Denver.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So I gave him my address and everything, and I started getting mail. And so I went to the 25th in Denver and got involved after that. So Yeah.
That is such a great story. I love that because, for me, being a bicentennial kid, I would have never learned about Up With People if they hadn't been doing the small groups in smaller towns, right?
Right.
Because I wasn't in Toledo and I wasn't in Cleveland. I was in Fremontish, but even a smaller town. So it was during that time when you were separated that I learned about, Up With People. So
Yeah.
it's kind of fascinating. But how cool that Ralph was. When you were telling it, I'm like, oh, please tell me Ralph answered the phone. That's super neat. So
Yeah.
so then another thing that I know that a lot of people don't know is you have ridden your motorcycle to like a ton of reunions, right? Haven't you traversed? So the last one, I don't know if you did it the last time, right? After your accident that you had, whether
I haven't ridden a motorcycle since my accident.
Okay. So
I drove my car to the reunion last time.
Okay. So for those of you that are listening, Dave rode his motorcycle to several Up With People reunions. And then how many years has it been since your accident, Dave?
Well, it was 10 years ago last week.
That's what I was thinking, that you had posted that. And
Yeah.
that was a life-changing thing, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
For you. And so after that, then your house got plowed into by a car, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, man, when you just think about things that happen in life that we don't.
2 years before the motorcycle accident, I was walking across the street and I felt something pushing against my shoulder, and it was a Chevy Silverado pickup truck. And I put this big a dent in the front fender of the pickup truck, but I actually walked away from the accident.
You have had angels watching over you, albeit not like you haven't been through some tough times.
Well, I'll tell you another story another time, but I actually saw my guardian angel when I was recovering from my motorcycle accident.
Wow. All right. So another thing, I'm just throwing tidbits out that I know about you. So you have this beard. You're getting to your time of year where are you still doing Santa Claus for a lot of kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Starting the day after tomorrow.
Okay. Did you do any? My little brother does Santa in the San Antonio area. And he ended up doing a couple of Zooms in the last couple of years because nobody was going anywhere in person. Did you do any of that, or did you just kind of
No, I didn't do any of it on Zoom, but my first time to be Santa Claus was in Up With People.
Really?
Yeah, because in 1968 we were in Yuma, Arizona, on our way to Santa Fe, where we spent Christmas as a cast.
Okay.
And in Yuma, we rented a Santa suit. And when we did Up With People, we said, well, it happened just this morning. I was walking down the street when a milkman and a postman and Santa Claus I didn't meet.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've interviewed enough people from Yuma now. I realize how much time was spent there because there's a whole group, that came to us from Yuma, and it's been fun learning about their stories. And I don't have any idea about any of that. So that's very cool, Dave. So the other thing that you are known for, you have sung for many of the casts. Tell those who don't know what you sing and how many languages you can sing it in.
Well, I sing Up With People in French, Spanish, Italian, Flemish, English, and Swahili.
That's awesome. And did you learn Swahili all the way back in like the days in Africa?
In 1970, when we went to Africa, we sang it in Swahili. Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I don't speak any of those languages. I just have it all, memorized from back in those days.
I do the same thing. I'll sing like the Chinese song from the show, or I'll sing to some of the Mexicans here in town, and I'll sing El Puente or something. And they're like, oh, you speak Spanish? No, I just sing this song.
I still sing What Color Is God's Skin in French, Flemish, and Spanish also.
Do you? Tell me, what's your favorite language to sing Up With People in? Is there one that you like the best?
the look on people's faces when I say Swahili is
Okay.
just amazing.
So-
People light up.
Yeah, so why don't you sing just a little bit of it?
Juju Nawatu Uakuta Guadapo. Juju Nawatu Undi Jamapo to Tujuavo. Kamawatu Wengi Saidia Nakati Kahuli Mwengu Kunge Kuwawu Chachua Subako Ina Wengi Wanawa Jolly Kunge Kuwawu Chachua Subako Ina Wengi Wanawa Jolly.
Thank you. That is so fun. And I can guarantee that way fewer alumni know that in that language than any other. I'm sure that we have the people that know in French
It's a
and
pretty
Flemish.
good guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And do swing claps still in English or whatever, but
Yeah.
that's very cool. So Dave, one of the questions that I ask a lot of people is if you have a song that meant a lot to you. By the way, I don't even know that we have a lot of alumni who know who Ed White was, right? So when you go back to that song and you think about the number of years that has gone by, but you've been to a lot of reunions, you've played at a lot of things. Do you have a song or two that just resonates with you and means the most to you after a lot of years?
Well, Singing Up the Holler, of course. That was my song when I was in Up for People.
Yeah.
And
we're going to have to tell everybody to look that up. That's great. Yeah.
Okay. And then Glenn Close wrote a song. Glenn and we traveled at the same time.
Right.
She wrote a song back in 1969 called Nose Ticklers.
Called what?
Nose Ticklers.
Nose ticklers? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll just go through the words for you. You only know it's raining when it tickles on your nose. You only know it's beauty when you see a rose. You only know it's morning when the rooster crows and tells you it's the end of night. You only know adventure after sneaking through the hay. You only know a pony when you've heard him neigh. You only know it's springtime when the robins come your way. You only know mosquitoes by their bite. You'll always be happy leaving footprints in the dew. Lean against a tree and watch the sunlight filter through. And fireflies start flashing when the night is turning blue and the mist rises over the treetops. You'll always be happy if you always give. You'll only know life when you decide to live. You'll only know peace when you learn to forgive. You'll only know you when you know it's inside and you're willing to give it away.
Wow. That's a great song. What great lyrics.
I sing that in schools for kids.
That is so, well, it's, so many songs are still, I don't know who I was talking to the other day, and they just said, isn't it weird? This wasn't even up with people. It was just 1960s and 70s, early 70s songs that mean as much now as they did then.
Yeah.
Right? Wow.
But when you sing that song to a group of first and second and third graders, and you can tell them this was written by Cruella de Vil, see their reaction.
That's awesome, Dave.
Yeah.
That's very cool. All right. So this is our friend Sheila. She's the one that told me I should give these rapid fire questions at the end. So one of them was about songs. But what about food? Was there any food that you loved when you tried it the first time, or anything that you would never eat again after traveling?
It's interesting because you can tell by looking at me, I do a pretty good job with food. But my first trip to Belgium, we're in Brussels.
Yeah.
And we went to a restaurant for dinner. And on the menu, they had this thing called filet Americain. And I thought, oh, wow, I haven't had any good meat since I've been here. I had a lot of chicken. So I ordered the filet Americain. The guy brings me this plate of raw hamburger with these spices in it. And he set it in front of me. I said, sir, you forgot to fry this. he took it away and brought me a ham sandwich.
You weren't ready for the raw meat. That's funny.
Yeah, yeah.
That's funny.
But
it's a learning experience for sure, isn't it? Traveling.
It really is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
gosh, very cool. Very cool. So do you think you'll be in Tucson, or not at Tucson, in Phoenix next summer? Do you think you'll come
I'm
out?
planning to be, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I love to drive, and I just get the car and go. You know, when we had the reunion in Orlando in 2015, I drove from here to Skagway, Alaska, and then from Skagway to Orlando, and then back home again. Just
Good
made
Lord.
a nice round trip out of it. Yeah.
I did about 5,200 miles last year, 2021, when people weren't flying yet. And I came back actually and allowed me to go to some towns that I wouldn't normally pass through. Right. I mean, it's so I'm with you. I love to drive, and I got to some places I hadn't been and spent a good week to 10 days in Ohio with family and friends, you know, coming through there. So I understand that. I like to drive too. And with my kids, 2 of them up in the Denver area now, I've made that trip a few times, you know. So I understand. And Up with People is returning in some manner this weekend, where some of the Tucson alumni are getting together over at Philly Leanne Woosters with the new CEO, who I met luckily back in Virginia, SEMA. So they're starting to put together their ideas for what the future looks like. And tell me, you know, it's been what for you? For me, it's been 46 years. How many? So has it been like 55 or 56 years since you traveled, Dave? 70?
Well, 52 years.
52 years. Okay. So
except that's not completely accurate, because in 2005, I traveled with the Capcast to Japan and Thailand.
That's right. That's right.
So, yeah.
So kids have so many options now. You know, they just go overseas and couch surf and stay with friends, and they travel all different ways. Tell me what you think, you know, if you're talking to a 20-year-old or a 22-year-old who's considering doing something different after high school, what would you say about Up with People to them?
If you want to learn that people are people are people are people, wherever you go, do it with Up with People, because that's what we learn. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter who you love. It doesn't matter. The thing that matters is that people are people. And they deserve it. Yeah. I
agree. Well,
can I share one quick story with you?
Yeah.
Can you see my hat?
I can see your hat. Yeah. Looks like a Nike hat, but with stuff on it.
Yeah. The stuff that is on it, it's blue and green paint.
Yeah.
And it's thumbprints from first graders. I go to schools and sing to kids all the time.
Yeah.
And one year on the last day of school, the teacher called me up and said, "Can you stop by?" So I did. And when I got to the school, they gave me this hat along with a letter. And when I opened the letter, it said, "Somebody loves you."
Oh, so cute. Oh, that's awesome. What a great idea. What a great idea. Oh, thank you for sharing that.
So just, yeah. So if you ever wonder, just look at your thumb. Know that somebody loves you.
Somebody loves you. That's a great, you know, I have to tag these things. So there's a lot that you've said today that I'll try to remember. I'll have to listen to it again. And just so you know, I'm doing about 4 interviews in a very short time, so that then I'm not going to be doing them through Christmas. So I'll let you know when I make it live, you know, when we post it. And have a blessed Christmas, Dave, through, you know, the holidays. I know you bring joy to many as Santa, you know. But
I do what I can.
Yeah. It's a wonderful, if you got to have a hobby, what a great hobby, right? to have and to see the faces light up, and those who cry. I know I've seen those too, right? The ones who are scared. But if I don't talk to you again, please do have a Merry Christmas, a blessed holiday. And I will see you next summer because I intend to be there.
Okay,
Stuff. So
I'm
thank
looking
you for your
forward to it.
time.
My
Yeah,
pleasure.
I'm gonna stop the recording. All right.
All
Thanks,
right.
Dave.